Hi everyone, I'm Cindi Grace Miller. I'm a gender coach and transition expert. Today's video is specifically for women of trans experience, and it is a caution when it comes to cross-dressing. I realize this might surprise some of you, but I want to offer some cautions for you to consider when it comes to how you explore your gender and your identity. So when you are beginning to explore your gender identity or who you are, or maybe you're struggling with your gender dysphoria, it is very common to start building a wardrobe of clothing that represents the female gender that you feel that you are, and begin to cross-dress, either in private or in public. It usually starts in private, and it feels amazing. We've all been there. We've all experienced this. This may even confuse you as to why it feels so good. Now, I've covered in the past the difference between having an identity to be a woman and simply wanting to feel more feminine or womanly. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to address those who truly know and want to be the woman that they are, and are using cross-dressing as a way to tap into that identity in any way that they can. So when you wear clothing that seems appropriate to your female identity, it can feel like getting a breath of fresh air. Kind of after being locked in a box or a closet that doesn't have a lot of air in it, all of a sudden you can breathe. Now, even though our clothing is simply a cultural expression of femininity, but when you're at a place in your life that you feel like you can't be the female or the woman that you know that you really are, the clothing can be a substitute for that. Now, here's where the cautions come in. The first one is this, and it's related to how you dress in private and the clothes that you buy. It feels good, and it's very normal that this good feeling will often lead to sexual arousal and even orgasm a lot of the time. This is something that your psyche needs, but it can cause a lot of conflicting feelings in a lot of people. In fact, it often can lead to shame and guilt. To add to this shame and guilt, some people experience feelings of inferiority or depression, because when you look in the mirror, all you see and all that your brain tells you is that you are a man in feminine clothing. And you fear that you'll never be able to live the reality of the woman that you truly are. And so even though it feels like a breath of fresh air to wear the clothing, it ends up having a negative effect that reinforces your negative self-image every time you do it. Some even have a type of PTSD experience because they know that they have to go back into the box or back into the closet where there's very little air and they can't continue to breathe normally. So first off, you shouldn't feel any guilt or shame for feeling good about your true gender identity. The reason you feel this guilt and shame is not because it's legit, but because you most likely have lived in a culture that was very anti-transgender or anti-cross-dressing. And you actually can even become transphobic against your own self. However, let me caution you against creating a habit out of this private cross-dressing. Now, I understand, because I have been there, that sometimes you just need a breath of fresh air. You just need to know that you are that woman. But often we develop this practice into a habit that we can't stop. And the habit actually keeps us from moving forward with our transition and what we really need. You see, transition is not simply a preference or an expression choice, but it is a biological need that you have to live your authentic gender identity 100% of the time. Now, many of you may have bought into the lie that it is simply a way that you express yourself, and you create a habit that's keeping you from transitioning to your real self. This type of cross-dressing habit can actually become a traumatic event that reinforces a transphobic mindset in yourself. And I don't want that for you. Now, this leads me to those who cross-dress in public. So this might be when you pick clothing to express your femininity and your true gender identity and go out in public. And specifically, I'm referring to those who have not started living full-time yet as their true feminine self, but instead they go out in public dressed as their true self and then come back home and then go back into male mode. Now, I want to first establish that if you are truly transgender, then technically I'm not even sure I would call this cross-dressing. Rather, pretending to be a man when you are not is kind of closer to cross-dressing, but let's be honest, I know it doesn't feel that way, does it? There are two cautions, though, that I want to give you when it comes to the practice of periodically going out into public as your true feminine self and then hiding everything away and pretending to be a man and then doing it over and over and over again. The first caution is this. It's in the clothing that you pick. Now, this caution would apply to you not only when you are taking your feminine identity out for, let's say, a test drive, but also when you go full-time as your true self. Anyone who was raised in a modern male-dominated culture, such as ours, more than likely has a slightly or not so slightly altered view of femininity and what it means to be a woman. Even if it's not consciously how you think, on a subconscious level, most men in male culture view women in a sexual way. They view femininity in a sexual way. You can see this when individuals begin to try on their new feminine identity and they buy hyper-feminine or hyper-sexualized clothing. This might be a fascination with really high heels or short skirts or sexy lingerie or maybe even low tops. When you do this and you dress this way, you can actually reinforce this idea that being a woman is a sexual thing. Now, here at Cindi Grace, we are very sex positive. We think sex and sexuality is wonderful. However, being a woman has nothing to do with sex or sexuality or being sexy. Every time you reinforce this stereotype on how you choose to dress in order to express your own femininity, you actually can slow down the momentum of your transition. You actually add a bit of tension into truly identifying as the woman that you are. It's also a really clear way for the world to know that you don't fully understand yet what it means to express your femininity. It's kind of like a neon sign. So when you're dressing as your true gender identity, pay close attention to how other women that are in your age bracket and your cultural group dress. Now, not just how they dress on, let's say, special occasions, but how do they dress on a day-to-day basis? How do they use their jewelry, their scarves, their clothing to express their own femininity? The more you are able to acclimate this type of dressing into your transition, the faster your momentum will be. Now, the second caution I want to give is to those who develop the habit of dressing as their true identity and then going to different events or out into public with friends, but not having a plan to actually transition full-time as their true self. Now, I know often we tell ourselves that we do this for other people in our lives, but this is a lie that we tell ourselves. It's actually driven by fear. The fear of transition, the fear of losing something or someone, or just the fear of upsetting the apple cart of our lives. Now, why would I have a caution related to this? Here's why. I caution against this type of behavior for somebody that is truly transgender and not simply somebody who enjoys cross-dressing. As good as it feels and as fun as it is, it actually can create a lot more tension in your experience as a person of trans experience, and it can slow down any possible future transition that you actually want to make. So let me explain that a little bit. It's kind of like a caterpillar who, instead of submitting to the process of the cocoon, they periodically put on a butterfly costume and go out into public and have a great time. And maybe they even develop a habit of doing this regularly, but by doing this, they can often fool their own subconscious. And they begin to believe that they don't really need to transition. Their brain gets used to going back and forth and riding the fence between the two genders there, when you truly need to live your authentic life and gender, then this perpetual in-between stage is actually harmful, way more harmful than helpful. It can also be harmful to the subconscious brain patterns of the people who are in our lives and closest to you, such as a spouse or family. I've seen it too much. Way too many spouses get used to their mate going back and forth. And when this happens, most spouses, unfortunately, still put their partner in a male category. Their brain never lets them fully transition to seeing their partner as the woman that she is. The transition that the spouse's brain needs to go through is very hard, but it is very important to a successful partner transition. One of the most important parts to a successful feminine transition is for you to fully own and admit that you are a woman. This is admitting and owning the fact that you are fully female, regardless of what your external image looks like. And until you do this, it's going to be very difficult for others around you to do this. You are fully female, even if you go to work and play the role of a man. You are fully female, even if you can still grow facial hair. You are fully female, even if your physical body has sexual characteristics that don't represent the female form. You see, being female is about brain chemistry and gender identity. It is actually healthier to adopt this female identity fully and then slowly begin the process of feminization. No one but you even needs to know that you're making some of these steps towards feminization. Maybe you're working on your brain patterns and how you identify. Maybe you're slowly starting hormones, but not letting most of the world know just yet. Maybe you're getting laser or electrolysis on your facial hair. And maybe, and hopefully, you are creating a strategy for your gender transition. I really want to caution you against allowing cross-dressing to get in the way or add tension to you being the authentic gender that you really are. Now, let me also caution you against believing that you will never be able to blend into society as your true self. I once thought the same way as well. The world saw me as a man. I had very broad shoulders. I was once over 265 pounds. I played football. I had no idea how I would ever blend in as the woman that I am. But guess what? I blend in just fine now. Now, it took a lot of hard work and a lot of planning and a lot of support, but I've seen many other individuals just like myself, and to be honest, many who are overweight or very tall or all of these things that we allow to scare us. And I've seen all of us transition into the woman that we are today, and we blend in wonderfully in today's society, as imperfect as it is. You can do this, and I'm pulling for you.